Happy Friday, everybody, from sunny Southern California. It's a beautiful day down here in the Southland, and we're going to talk some football. We've got a big week 9 coming up, and I've highlighted one of the big matchups that I think we're going to see: Texas versus Colorado. We're going to get into it in just a minute, as Thursday night football has already happened, and we are getting ready and geared up for the Sunday games. All right, I picked this one right out of the gate because it's a big one for Texas, as they are now 3-5, and a loss here against Colorado would get them to within one game of elimination from the championship round. Of course, Mark Jones's Colorado Buffaloes are 5-3, as you can see here, and a win here would get them to within one game of the championship bracket. So, big thing right off the top: Brock Purdy of Texas is out for this game with a bye. And as you can see, Texas has Sam Howell available, but he is on redshirt status right now. So they have a big decision to make, as Sam Howell is down to one game, one eligible game to play this season before losing redshirt status. So they could actually activate him for this game and not lose redshirt status, but he would basically be unavailable for the rest of the season if they wanted to keep him on the redshirt status. Now, here's the thing: with 5 losses already, Texas really needs a win here, and they're going to be without some other key players. Chase Young, also on the defensive line, number 3 in scoring this year, is out with the bye, and Chad Muma, their linebacker 4, is out. And Muma, as you can see, averaging about 2 points a game, which isn't terrible for a linebacker in this league. So they do have some buys. As far as injuries, they don't have any. So basically, they have a chance to win this game, and I'll tell you why. When you look at Colorado, they have a ton of buys and or injuries. As it turns out, Colorado is going to be without Trevor Lawrence, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Allen, their best defensive lineman. They are also missing most of their secondary with buys. As you can see here, Jerry Jacobs, Andre Sisco, Damari Mathis, and Delari Turner. So basically, this is a beatable team right now, Colorado. And that makes you wonder if maybe Texas should be thinking about throwing away their final game of eligibility for Sam Howell here. Sam Howell has already played 3 games. He's been active in 3 games, so he has 1 game left because redshirt rules state you can use a guy for 4 games and still be able to redshirt him. He plays 1 more game, no more redshirt. So something to consider here. And again, you look at the standings. Texas sitting at 3-5. They can ill afford to lose here. This is the rest of the way for Texas. They got Georgia, Ohio State, Tulane, and California. All pretty competitive games there. I mean, they need a win right now. And it has me thinking that maybe they should be considering Sam Howell's final game of eligibility right here. The idea for Texas, if they make the championship bracket, would be to use Sam Howell in their final bowl game to give themselves the best shot at winning. But right now, I don't know if they have a lot of choices. So an interesting game. You've got Colorado all dinged up with buys and injuries, and you've got Texas sitting at 3-5 with an opportunity to win this game and keep their championship hopes alive. I I don't know. I don't know. What would you do? I personally would probably bring Sam Howell in. Either way, it's an interesting situation that Texas finds themselves in. So that is the Texas Colorado matchup. Next up on the docket, I'm going to go with the California Alabama matchup. California coming in at 4-4, Alabama at 6-2. We'll get to that one in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. And moving right along, we're going to talk about this California Alabama matchup, a game where both teams are going to be without big time starters. For Cal, of course, it's their star wide receiver Justin Jefferson out on the injured reserve list right now. And for Alabama, it's going to be their starting quarterback Justin Fields. So big losses on both sides of the ball, both sides of the field. And California, of course, needing this victory more so than Alabama does. Cal coming in at 4-4, and they can ill afford to go 4-5. And just a quick note on Justin Jefferson: he is available through his fifth year. He's not going to graduate at the end of this season because when I was in control of this team 3 years ago, when Justin Jefferson was in his sophomore year, it might have been 2 years ago, I put him on redshirt status because Cal was not a very good team that year. And so I figured it would be smart to just, knowing that Jefferson was a great player, put him on redshirt status and get that red shirt so that he would be available for his fifth season. And that's something that everybody should consider in this league. When you're running a team in this league, redshirt your guys when it's a lost cause. Put guys on redshirt status so you can keep them when you get competitive. When you get that quarterback you need to win, when you get that offense in place, your defense is playing well, you want to have as much of your best players as possible in a season like that. If it's a bad season, your team is bad, get the guy on redshirt status early, leave him there, keep him for bowl season. That's the beauty of this league as well, is that you can keep these guys and then use them for bowl season. I mean, just because you redshirt them early doesn't mean you've lost them for the year. If you have 2 or 3 eligible games at the end of the year, activate the guy in December, and he'll be there in bowl season. So, anyways, moving right along here, let's just talk about the injuries and the buys. For California, running back 3, Craig Reynolds is going to be out with a bye. Reynolds averaging just 1.3 points per game, but he did have a decent week last week at 2.16 fantasy points. And as you can see, that actually was the second best. No, that was best among running backs for California. So Craig Reynolds is going to be out with a bye this week. That certainly hurts. You can see here a big game in week 5 and then a decent game in week 8. Every point counts in this league. So he will be missed. Also with injuries, we mentioned Justin Jefferson. Also, they're going to be without wide receiver 4 Michael Wilson, who is questionable. They won't necessarily be without him, but he is questionable. Michael Wilson has been very productive over the past few weeks. You can see he really peaked in week 4 with 6.4 fantasy points on 76 yards receiving, 7 catches, and 2 touchdowns. And the guy's been getting targets, as you can see, 6 targets last week, 5 the week before. And he did not practice on Thursday. He is questionable for this week's game. That would be quite a loss, even though he is wide receiver 4 status. That's one thing about this Cal team. They've been able to put together a pretty talented group of wide receivers, as you can see here. And with 2 injuries among their top guys, well, that doesn't bode well for them, although it's still a very winnable game because Alabama does have their issues at quarterback. They'll still have Zay Flowers for sure and Jacoby Myers, which is more than enough to get it done. But looking at the running game, you see that there's no guarantee they're going to get a big game from either Jalen Warren or Chuba Hubbard. So they really do depend on a 3 wide receiver set to get it done in this league. Other than that, they're going to be missing one of their defensive backs, Jacoby Durant of the Rams, but he's kind of inconsequential. He's number 6 on the depth chart. A look at Alabama. shows that Justin Fields, of course, is out with a thumb. Not necessarily out. He's listed as doubtful, but it doesn't look very good. And when you look at some of the comments in chat that Mark Jones made this week, he talked about maybe the Bears are looking to trade Justin Fields, or maybe the coaches just don't like his performance and they're trying to save face by just leaving him out so that maybe they don't look as bad and lose their jobs, perhaps. And that's possible. I mean, that is something that could be likely in a league such like in the NFL. I mean, guys are worried about losing their jobs. It's not just the players, it's the coaches because those are good jobs. Alabama is going to be without their second best wide receiver as well, Marvin Mims, but he only averages 1.4 fantasy points, so hardly a big loss. The rookie linebacker Jack Campbell also going to be missing this week. Campbell averaging about 2 fantasy points. He's still a developing player, and he will be missed, but he's not one of their leaders like Terrell Bernard or Logan Wilson. They have enough to get by in the linebacker department. Other than that, they are without a defensive back. Tyson Campbell, their fifth best defensive back, but averaging about 2.6 fantasy points. He's no slouch, and he will be missed for this game. Looking at California's schedule going forward, they've got New Mexico in Week 10. That's going to be a tough one to win. They're playing Michigan in Week 11, then Penn State, then Texas. These are all contenders, all teams with 500 or better records. So California really could use this win this week with Alabama being kind of banged up, having no quarterback, Justin Fields possibly out. I mean, there's no guarantee he's out. Maybe he plays, but he does have a bad thumb. That's not a good thing for a quarterback. It's looking like California might have the upper hand in this one. And that will bring us to the New Mexico versus Penn State matchup. You've got Penn State coming in at 5-3. You've got New Mexico at 7-1. New Mexico already in the championship bracket for all intents and purposes, unless there's 8 teams with 7 wins. Not likely to happen. At this point, New Mexico just wants to keep piling on the wins so that they can secure that first round bye into the Rose Bowl. For Penn State, of course, they need a win here if they can get one, because not only does it get them closer to the championship bracket, but it also alleviates the pressure of beating some very good teams down the stretch. Penn State looking at Ohio State in Week 10, then Georgia, who's no laydown. They've got Cal and Alabama, all very good teams. So an important game for Penn State. If they could pull off an upset here against New Mexico, it takes the pressure off of having to go 500 against this group of teams. And that's something we're going to talk about in a minute. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. And when I come back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this big New Mexico versus Penn State matchup, a battle between two title contenders. Well, if Penn State had any chance of defeating New Mexico, a red hot team, the Lobos, it would be due to buys and injuries. And as it turns out, New Mexico has a page full of buys and or injuries. For one thing, they're without their best running back, Khalil Herbert, who's expected to miss time until week 10. So he's out for action this week. They're also without talented young tight end Pat Fryermuth. They're also without their best linebacker, their third best linebacker, their second best defensive lineman, their third best wide receiver, who's like one of the best wide receivers in football. That would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. The list goes on for New Mexico. Of course, New Mexico does have their talented two-headed quarterback situation with rookie Bryce Young and veteran Gardner Minshew. And he gives New Mexico a big time advantage at quarterback because if Bryce Young is struggling, Gardner Minshew comes in. However, the loss of Khalil Herbert definitely hurts because other than Herbert, they don't really have a lot going on in the running game. As far as wide receivers are concerned, Puka Nakua, their best wide receiver to this point in the season, is questionable for this week's game. Jamar Chase, of course, will play, and he's definitely an asset. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is out with a bye. They do have Michael Pittman, and week in and week out, you don't know what you're going to get from Tutu Atwell or Darnell Mooney. They have the makings of a three wide receiver offense here, but they're definitely going to miss Amon-Ra St. Brown. Pat Fryermuth, who had a great rookie season, is out, I believe, indefinitely for this game. Yes, he is on the injured reserve list, and he is out until week 11. However, Trey McBride has been outstanding over the past handful of weeks. This past week, he had 14 targets and 95 yards receiving. Obviously, he's a possession type receiver, a safety valve for the inexperienced quarterback in Arizona. But he had a 17-yard touchdown, 10 catches, and 6.8 fantasy points. And the last 3 weeks, he has been a factor. And he came out of nowhere. If you can have another week like that, well, that would bode well for New Mexico's chances at pulling off yet another win. It would be their 8th win of the season. New Mexico is also going to be without their second best pass rusher, Aiden Hutchinson, due to the bye. But they do have Kwity Paye, who's strong. They are missing their best linebacker, Ernest Jones. They are also missing a couple of Nicks here, Nick Bonito and Nick Bolton. Bolton is out with an injury. I believe Bolton is going to miss time due to, let's see what it is with Bolton, a wrist. And he's out until week 16. So no Nick Bolton, no Nick Bonito because of the bye. That hurts. They are without their second best defensive back, Tolanoa Hufanga. They're out Jaquan Brisker, their third best defensive back. I mean, the injuries have piled up here, and the byes are also compounding that to make New Mexico semi-vulnerable in this game. Meanwhile, Penn State comes in with a red-hot quarterback, one of the best in the league right now, Tua Tagovailoa. But unfortunately, things get a little bit difficult when it gets to the running game for Penn State as they are without their best back, Devon Achane. They're going to be without Jaleel McLaughlin due to the bye. They do have Darrell Henderson, who they picked up from the Rams. He's covering right now for Kyron Williams and doing a pretty good job. As you can see, he's averaging 3 points a game. Chris Brooks is out. He was performing well in place of Achane when Achane was down, but he's going to miss this game due to an injury. So the running game will be able to produce at least Darrell Henderson for Penn State and a strong quarterback performance, most likely, unless Kansas City has some way of stopping Tua Tagovailoa. As far as the wideouts go, Penn State has a great one here in Jordan Addison, who's definitely benefiting from the absence of Justin Jefferson. They've got Christian Watson, who can put up a big game. Van Jefferson, capable. He's with a new team in Atlanta, as you can see, not really putting up huge numbers. The defense for Penn State is weak up front with the pass rush. All they have is one guy basically doing all the pass rushing and a group of also rans. The linebacker position and the defensive backs are pretty strong for Penn State, so that gives them an opportunity. It's really going to come down to the wide receiver play, the quarterback play. Definitely the defense is going to have to step up. And then they're going to hope that all the buys and injuries hurt New Mexico to the point that it gives Penn State an opportunity to win this game. When you look at the games coming up for Penn State, we looked at them before. Tough group of games. They would have to win two of these games, even with a loss to New Mexico. If they can beat New Mexico, then they only have to win one of these games, and most likely they're getting into the championship round. So Penn State, an important game this week against New Mexico, a game that could really make things easier for them if they can pull off the upset. And as it turns out, New Mexico is kind of vulnerable right now. This is as vulnerable as they have been. Well, we're on to the last part of the schedule here. These are the also ran games. I went over the close ones, the ones that are expected to be close. You have, let's see here, you've got Georgia taking on Oregon this week. Even though Georgia is shorthanded to a certain extent, they have some issues. They are going to be without their best wide receiver due to the bye, Brandon Ayuk. They're without one of their best linebackers in Dre Greenlaw. They're missing one of their best defensive backs. An assortment of red flags at the running back position, which is not really a strength of theirs in the first place. Fortunately for them, they are playing against Oregon this week, which is always a laydown victory. Georgia coming up has Texas, Penn State, Alabama, and Tulane, and they would need to win two of these games to get into the championship bracket. Alabama, of course, a team that can be beaten. I think Tulane is the same thing. I think Georgia has a very good shot at making the championship bracket. And that's all the more surprising due to the fact that they didn't have a quarterback coming into the season. As you can see, they have been benefiting from the quarterback situation in Chicago with Tyson Bagent taking over for Justin Fields due to his thumb injury. And that has helped the Georgia Bulldogs stay in the race. But even without Bagent, this team can win, and they have shown that. Somehow they have been able to put together victories, and somehow they have been able to clear 40 points every week going back to week 4. So Georgia will get an easy victory this week against Oregon. It looks like their chances of making the championship round are very good indeed. San Diego State has a tough matchup coming up against Ohio State. San Diego State will have their quarterback. They will have pretty much everybody of importance on offense, with the exception, of course, of Kyron Williams, who's going to be out for an extended period. There is a chance that the Aztecs leave Kyron Williams on the injured reserve list and just take the medical red shirt, because the Rams might just be packing it in for the season. They lost a big one this week against the Cowboys, and they've lost a lot of close games, and it might be a situation where they're just going to be like, why run the risk of injuring our talented young running back and maybe not play him much down the stretch. And San Diego State does have some guys that they can fall back on. Ramondre Stevenson, A.J. Dillon. Maybe Devin Singletary steps up. Maybe Ronnie Rivers gets healthy perhaps and gets some time. Although it looks like Darrell Henderson has done a really good job of taking over in the absence of Kyron Williams. I wouldn't depend on Ronnie Rivers, but it just seems like a situation where maybe San Diego State would be wise to leave Kyron Williams on injured status and take the medical red shirt. It all depends on how he looks when he comes back. San Diego State's strength this week will definitely be the wide receiver position. There is an injury concern with Josh Downs, who has stepped up in recent weeks and been a factor. He has a knee issue, and he was limited at practice, but he did practice. He's listed as questionable for week 9, but that doesn't mean he's out. So San Diego will be sitting and waiting and hoping that Josh Downs is fine. When you look at the recent games from Downs, some big ones here. 7 points in week 7. He had 4 points last week, 3 points in week 6, 5 points in week 5. I mean, this guy has been a godsend to a wide receiver core that was heavily dependent on Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb coming into this season. And they really needed a wide receiver 3. They were not getting anything from De'Ami Brown. They have taken chance after chance on this guy. They drafted him third round when he was a rookie. They stuck with him after a terrible rookie season through his sophomore season. Then they let him go, picked him back up as a free agent, and once again, he's letting them down big time. They picked up Jalen Rager last week and hoping that he was going to do something, and as it turns out, he just laid an egg. But Jalen Rager is one of those guys, they've been talking highly of him in New England. Perhaps he has a big game in him down the line, and the Aztecs, of course, would benefit from that. Luke Musgrave is an issue right now. He's been on and off the injured list all season long. He has an ankle issue right now. He was limited in practice, and he is questionable, but every week he has been able to make his way onto the field to this point. Ohio State will have their starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. As you can see, Jerry Jeudy is out with a bye. That's going to hurt them. Second best pass rusher, Trayvon Walker, with the bye. There are some red flags on defense. You got Cody Barton out and on the IR. He's not going to play this week's game. But other than that, Ohio State is pretty healthy. Not too many buys. They have a shot at winning this game, but as you can see by the predicted score, San Diego State is expected to cruise to victory by about 14 points. And if that is the case, San Diego State, for all intents and purposes, will have made the championship bracket, and Ohio State will be all but finished for the season with 6 losses. The schedule ahead for Ohio State has Penn State, Texas, Oregon, and New Mexico. Only Oregon is a laydown. They can only afford to lose one of these games against Penn State, Texas, and New Mexico. New Mexico looking very, very much like the game that they would lose, obviously. But Texas is a tough opponent, as is Penn State. I mean, the chances of Ohio State recovering from 6 losses at this point in the season are pretty slim. Maryland is expected to roll over Tulane. Maryland coming in at 6-2. If they do win this game, it looks like they will be in the championship bracket for certain. Of course, they will with 7 wins. As I said before, I doubt that anybody's going to have, or there's going to be 8 teams with 7 wins this season. So it looks like Maryland should be able to cruise to victory. And of course, we talked about Michigan versus Fresno State earlier in the week. If you want to check that video out, I dropped that one a couple of days ago. But I think I've covered everything for the week. I'm going to take one last break, and when I come back, we'll just wrap this thing up and get ourselves ready for the weekend games. Be back in just a minute, everybody. Well, that's going to do it for today's show, the preview of Week 9. We'll leave you with this California-Alabama box score last night, Thursday Night Football. Saw California get some pretty big performances from their quarterback, Will Levis. Not really a huge performance, but anything will do. And the nice thing about Cal is that they've got Desmond Ridder on deck, and he could add some more points. But even more importantly, Jalen Warren, the running back, with a huge game, 5.81 points. And I think Mark Jones, consequentially the opponent of Cal this week, Mark Jones, I think he mentioned something about that Jalen Warren character earlier in the season in chat, if I'm not mistaken. He was saying, set him free. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you can there, Mark, but I think you were talking about this guy when Najee Harris was struggling pretty badly. But at any rate, I'm going to sign off here from sunny Southern California. The sun is about to go down. I'm learning this clip champ thing. I'm getting better. I'm learning how to edit and make these videos more concise and easy to listen to. Hopefully, if you guys enjoy them, give me a thumbs up. Well, if you don't, that's okay too. I'm going to keep getting better. And I think one of the things I have to do is upgrade my computer. I need a faster processor because I notice I'm getting buffering and it takes time to load music onto the video, and that slows me down quite a bit. But eventually I'll get that all figured out and I'll be making some great videos and continually making great videos, and it will take me less time so that I'll be more excited about doing them. All right, guys, that's all I've got from you for you from California. Once again, you guys have a great weekend and enjoy the games.